Welcome to the PCOS Society of India. As a founder president of the organization, I welcome you all to be part of our organization, which is a multidisciplinary organization consisting of specialists and experts from various fields of medicine who look after women with PCOS and even young girls and even children. Our organization is focused on education of the doctors and education of our patients. With the recent Vijayata program, which we have created through the support of Philips India, we are reaching out to women all over the country. And I request all of you to be part of this program, to take this complete agenda nationally and to educate our women on how they can prevent complications for themselves in future. I also request you to become our members, because that is what is going to help you in updating your skills in this field, which is really a very growing area of treating women and preventing problems in future. Thank you very much, all of you who have been with us, and I look forward to interacting with you in many, many more programs to come.
Good evening, everyone. This is Priyanka here from the PCOS Society India. I welcome you all for today's panel discussion on PCOS and mental health. Today we have experts with us who are going to discuss about the emotional and psychological aspects of PCOS. So I request everyone to be with us till the end. And if you have any questions, we'll try to address them towards the end of the discussions. So about PCOS Society of India, as the name suggests, we are working towards the cause of PCOS. The society is a multidisciplinary and contains a mix of gynecologists, endocrinologists, dermatologists, and specialists like nutritionists, physiotherapists who deal with PCOS patients. So this panel discussion is being conducted under Vijayata the Winner project, which is a CSR initiative of PCOS Society of India, and it is being supported by Philips. So through this program, we are creating awareness of PCOS pan-India through a network of doctors by conducting seminars and webinars in various institutions, colleges, corporates across India. So today we have Dr. Riddhi Desai with us, who is going to moderate today's panel discussion. I welcome Dr. Riddhi Desai, ma'am. She's a consultant endoscopic surgeon and gynecologist based in Mumbai. She's a managing committee member of MOX, the PCOS Society of India, and AFG. She's a co-editor of the Pandora newsletter, certified IMS menopause practitioner. She's also a certified medical writer and peer reviewer for Journalist of Obstetrics and Gynecologist of India. She has received several awards, including the Young Gynecologist Award 2024 and 2022. She has received several other MOX awards. She has also achieved Young Skill and Excellence Star Award 2023, Dr. Prabhavati R. Dikshit Scholarship 2021. She has also received numerous Best Paper awards. And she has also contributed to numerous international and national index journals and academic chapters. So I welcome Dr. Riddhi Desai, ma'am. Ma'am, I request you to take over and introduce our other panelists for today's panel discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Priyanka. She's been tirelessly working behind the scenes to bring this program. So big thank you to you. Good evening, everyone. We today are going to be discussing mental health in PCOS, something that hasn't been spoken much about. Today we aim to bring awareness about this, and we have with us a wonderful host of panelists with us, experts in their own fields who are all working for PCOS and who are working for mental health. So we are going to introduce them. We are going to welcome them now. We have with us Dr. Chandrika Anand. She is a consultant gynecologist and has her own center for PCOS. She does exhaustive work in PCOS and mental health both. She is a chief consultant at Fortis Hospital, Nagar Bhavi, Bangalore. She is a South Zone coordinator of the Endocrine Committee of FOXI. She is a managing committee member of the PCOS Society of India, and she has been a gold medalist throughout her education. Her major areas of interest are PCOS, high-risk pregnancy, and research. So we welcome you, ma'am. We hope to get wonderful insights from you. Our next panelist is Dr. Sapna Bangar. Madam is a specialist in adolescent, she's working highly in adolescent mental health. She is a senior child and family psychiatrist associated with Empower, Yellow Clinic for Children, and Sanctum Foundation. She has a postgraduate degree in psychiatry from Nayar Hospital in Mumbai. She has a certificate of clinical training from UK. She has been awarded her membership of Royal College of Psychiatry in 2009. She has completed her certification in child and adolescent psychiatry. She has set up evidence-based practice in psychiatry with emphasis in holistic multidisciplinary care and research-based interventions, as well as elevate stigma associated with mental health. So thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us. We'd love
Thank you,
inputs
Riddhi.
on this. Our next panelist is Dr. Ramya R. She's a psychologist who is based in Bangalore, and she's been extensively working for PCOS in mental health, and she's working with Dr. Chandrika Anand in her center. She's masters in psychosocial rehabilitation and has 11 years of experience in mental health field as a mental health counselor. She's currently working as a counseling psychologist at various centers. She has expertise in cognitive behavior therapy, group therapy, supportive psychotherapy, family assessment, and various other mental health therapies. She is committed to achieve results in patients by effective use of various proven and innovative psychiatric methods. So I welcome you, ma'am, and I welcome all our panelists and hope to have a wonderful and an interactive discussion. Before we start, just some house rules that all our panelists are going to give brief answers because we have a lot of things to cover. And our audience who's joined us today, we have a wonderful amount of registrations out there. So our live audience, please make full use of these experts being here. You can send us all your questions in the chat box and we'll be addressing them at the end of the program. Yes. So just for our audience, I think now PCOS has been much spoken about. We have a full month of PCOS Awareness Month, which is September. So September month has been generating awareness for PCOS. So it is an acronym for polycystic ovarian syndrome. We now don't use PCOD, which meant polycystic ovarian disease. It's not a disease anymore. We know it's a syndrome. It's a mixture of a lot of things. And in India, the prevalence is so high that almost 1 in every 5 Indian women suffers from PCOS. And it can occur at any age, starting with the first occurrence of menstruation. The majority of women are diagnosed as PCOS later on, after 20 or 30 years, which is, we need to pick this up a little early. PCOS is most frequently observed cause of female infertility as well. We all know PCOS is associated with irregular cycles. We know it is associated with acne, hirsutism, that is pimples, excess hair growth, excess hair fall. But what is not spoken much about is how it is related to mental health. And it is known and it's proven that PCOS girls have a high prevalence of mental health. So since there is a lot of stigma in our country in regards to mental health, I think today's topic is really relevant. And I hope that through this webinar, a lot of girls or a lot of women who are suffering from PCOS and certain mental health challenges do feel motivated enough to come up and talk about this. It has been there's such a stigma around it. So today let's, bust some myths and clear out this stigma. So I think let's just get on with the topic, Dr. Chandrika, you work extensively in PCOS. You have a whole center. You see day in and day out PCOS girls. What is your experience with the fact that, girls come up to you with the complaints of mental health? Or is it that it is always hidden and you have to bring it up? What are the other experiences that you have had with girls, who don't talk about it? So do you screen them? And how do you approach this topic?
Yeah, thank you, Riddhi, for inviting me as a panelist for a wonderful topic. Basically, in an international survey, they found that less than 5% of women with PCOS were satisfied by the way the doctor asked them questions. They felt that, in spite of talking to them, they thought there were so many things to share, so only 5% of patients were satisfied. In my center, because it is dedicated to PCOS, and we have psychologists, psychiatrists, we have counselors in our center. We do spend a lot of time with them. Almost we have a pro forma. I screen all the patients for depression and anxiety because it is international guidelines have recommended to screen. And Riddhi, you will be surprised that most often the girls are ready to open up. There is no taboo as such. If it is an adolescent, a older adolescent, I make sure that the parents are with them, and then I take their consent. Can I ask these questions? And then if they say yes, we do ask. If they say no, we don't. But adults, all of them, we are asking the questions, and they are happy that we are asking the questions.
That's great, madam. So I think basic idea is to get this out of them a lot of times because they don't. So I think they know that okay, irregular cycles तो गायनेक के पास जाना है. They know that अगर acne है या फिर अगर बाल ज़्यादा cosmetic concerns, then they know that they need to approach a dermatologist. They know that okay, if there is some weight gain, then they might approach some nutritionalist. But then when it comes to mental health, they sometimes do not know that okay, they need to approach for this because I think either stigma or a lot of time girls are just told okay, it's just bad mood, you are moody, and I don't think you should go and talk about this. So I think what is your experience that a lot of times do they take it as a easy, they're like हाँ ठीक है, I've had bad mood but I'm okay, otherwise I manage my things.
See, you will be surprised to know that the quality of life is reduced in PCOS. 80% of women with PCOS undergo depression, 76% undergo anxiety. These are all international figures. And body image issues are extremely prevalent, particularly in adolescents and in obese women, and with all the hair symptoms, is unwanted hair, acne, balding, and obesity. And eating disorders or disorders of eating, both are very common. Almost 90% of people have either of this, and psychosexual issues are very common. And unfortunately, all these things are not addressed in the OPD basis because number one, the patients in our setup, the patients are not trained to expose their feelings. It becomes a weakness or expression of a weakness. Second thing, the doctors do not have enough time to listen to them in the busy OPD practice. So and also most of the doctors don't know how to elicit the response also.
Absolutely.
In the sense, okay, now how do you have depression? We can't ask that. So we should, there are these standardized questionnaires. So whichever questionnaire we have to sit with a psychiatrist, find out which is the questionnaire or which is a screening method which is followed in that area, South India, North India. In the West, there are different questionnaires. So we need to sit with them and design or use some standardized questionnaires and ask them. And mind you, most of the women are very, very happy that we ask them those questions. So that is why it becomes very, very imperative. It becomes, for me, it is a social commitment. It is a commitment to society that we need to ask these girls because they are suffering so much. No other disease has got such a mental impact on the women's mood or the mind. Imagine the general depression. I'm sure the psychiatrist here, Dr. Sapna, we had a discussion. We were in the same panel in this international conference. So correct me if I'm wrong. So the general, what is the prevalence of depression in India? Around diagnosed depression is around 5 to 6%, and in people who come to the hospital, it's around 12%. And imagine in PCOS, it is 80%. It is too high. So I feel it is, and also even the anxiety. So it's a very, very high figure. It becomes a very alarming thing. We need to screen.
Oh, madam. So I actually wanted to ask Dr. Sapna this exact same question. So what happens in PCOS? Why is that PCOS there is more struggle? Why are there more mental health challenges? And what are the most common ones that you come across in your consultation?
Hello?
Yes, madam. So I wanted to ask you that why is it that especially with PCOS, like Dr. Chandrika mentioned that it is extremely high, all the incidents of these mental health struggles and issues are more with PCOS. So according to you, why do you think that it is more living with PCOS gives more mental health challenges? And in your experience, what are the most common ones that you go through?
I see a lot of young people, for example, presenting with body image issues. So mostly, for example, as Dr. Chandrika was saying, it is associated with hair loss, like, male kind of hair growth. It is associated with obesity. It is associated with acne. It is associated with the fear of infertility. So everything that we associate with feminism is something that is going, like, not according to plan in these young people. And for a younger, like, a girl, this is so much important that they start isolating themselves. They start feeling their self-image, their self-doubt starts increasing. They feel, I have seen a lot of young people presenting with anxiety, with depression, with body image issues, then contributing to eating disorders. So restricting their diet, for example, going on fat diets, going like excessively exercising. And I also, on the other spectrum, see non-compliance with treatment. There is somewhere a resistance of treatment. So a lot of gynecologists, for example, refer me cases that we have tried everything, but these young people or these women are just not getting better. And somewhere we see that, there is a helplessness coming in. There is like, whatever I do, there is it. This is not going to change. This is a lifelong condition. Why me? So all those questions are getting asked, and somewhere unconsciously or consciously, compliance with treatment starts getting affected. So even resistance to treatment is there. So we know there is a biological cause to, the depression and anxiety that comes in, which could be because of neurotransmitters or hormonal changes that happen. But there is also a huge aspect of the psychosocial reasons, the, expectations from society, from a woman or a young girl. There is also the, peer pressure that happens. There is body image and self-image, as I was talking about. So cultural factors play a huge role. In India, for example, as soon as you mention PCOS, the first worry that a woman will get, am I ever going to become a mother? Because somewhere they associate PCOS with infertility. So there are lots of myths associated with it, and unfortunately, instead of asking, they just keep it in and keep worrying about it. So mainly anxiety, depression, and eating disorders and body image issues are what we are seeing the most.
So true. Dr. Ramya, I want to ask you, how do these women know? Sometimes they don't know that they're going through all of this. They don't know they're suffering. Or how do they approach, or when do they approach, is what I want to ask you. So how can they pick it up that, okay, I am going through these struggles and I do need to approach somebody to talk about it. This is not something which is just temporary. It may worsen. So when do they come to you? Just for our audience.
Good evening. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Firstly, what I would like to say is, initially when women, especially in our Indian context, unless and until something happens, we don't go to doctors. So usually what happens when you're talking about adolescents, that is like, their personality is getting evolved, the age group between 10 or 14. They're not bothered much about any kind of gynecological issues or PCOS, anything. But when it comes to the issues like body image, distress, or any other things, what Chandrika ma'am and Sapna ma'am was talking about, only then they come to a gynecologist. From there, they pick it up that other related issues are happening. So directly in our Indian context, mental health or anything related to that, we are not finding. When they come to us in this age group, we will screen them initially in our centers. Like we screen them with our PHQ-9, or we also look for anxiety and depression, which is common, which we were talking about, because most of them, like more than 42% of them women experience about anxiety, and 32% depression. So what we do is we screen them with particular scales. First, we talk to them with screening, and then we diagnose them with any particular issues, and we plan the treatment accordingly. This is in the adolescents. And the age group beyond that, what happens is, only when they are planning for procreation or they have this period issues, only then they come to the gynecologist. So there also we do the same procedure with help of their spouse and family support, because a lot of stigma is associated with these things. We work on the 360 degree of their problem, so that we could reach to the etiology of the problem to understand what is exactly is making them feel low, or other symptoms like depression or anxiety or anything. So these are the things where we get to know that, only when they come. So otherwise it is completely suppressed.
So true. So what are the clues that parents can use to, to take it out, or bring their daughters to you? So what all can they look for, or what the family members can look for? What are the clues?
Anybody at home or anybody, firstly, what they have to do is they have to start observing their kids. First thing is they have to talk to the kids, understand their body language, and most important thing is their emotions. So when we talk to them, when they feel low, we will understand what they are going through, and you can always give them a reassurance of telling it's okay, we will handle this. And we have to educate them about each and every aspect, what they are going, the journey, the transition from their the age of 10 to 14 or to the teenage, the transition period. The parents should start observing their physical changes happening. They have to educate them. Even these days, even in schools, they are doing the workshops and all those things. By media also, we can help them, because these days kids are more into media. So even through that, we can educate them, but in a positive way. So parents at home can always try to engage them by talking more with them, spending quality time with them, and educating them. So first thing is, when we are there, ultimately kids are reflection of us. So when we are there with them, we have to observe them, because some kids may end up with substance, some kids may end up with other suicidal thoughts. So when we try to spend a lot of time with him and observing them, we can avoid so many things, and also we can rule out what is exact the issue is.
So you very rightly said this, that, this transition time. So when the transition time between, say, going through puberty, like we say, so it's a time where there are lots of hormonal changes, and that's the time when most of these young girls get affected with mental health challenges. And I think very rightly said that most of these people may end up with a gynecologist first, and it never happens that they come up to first the psychiatrist unless it gets like really worse. So there's a lot of underlying things that need to be picked up at the gynecologist level, and like you said, that we have scales to assess that. So I think this is a wonderful take-home message for all our audience, that make gynecologists your best friends. I think come up and talk to them. Talking is very important, and gynecs are here to listen to you. So whatever you're going through, whatever challenges are there, do not ignore them. They are all very valid feelings. I think that's where it starts from. And talk to your gynecs. So, Madam, Dr. Chandrika, I wanted to ask you, stress is something which even young girls are going through these days. So is stress related to PCOS, or is PCOS related to stress? What is it? What came first? I think a lot of people don't understand this. And what do you think in your experience?
Yeah, I think the definition of stress, I think our Sapna madam will tell in a more scientific way. Everyone seems to be stressed about everything nowadays, all generations, all age groups, men, women alike, more so women. But yeah, technically speaking, any stress or any stressful situation, whether it is acute stress or a chronic stress to expose to the body, can result in increased steroid secretions. Steroids are glucocorticoid secretions. So that can eventually affect the ovaries and the brain and the cognition, and temporarily affect the eating disorders and sleep and eating habits and hormone secretions. Like when there is an exam, we miss a period, and when there is anxiety, when you're traveling somewhere, even when you're excited, you miss a period, or you tend to eat more and all those things. So temporarily, yes, stress can be associated with the increased steroids, and it can affect the hormonal imbalance. But then stress is not causing PCOS in the sense, the excess glucocorticoids are not exactly causing PCOS, but there can be an association. But as Dr. Sapna rightly told, these excess androgens or the testosterone in the women with PCOS, and the more inflammation is there in PCOS, women with PCOS, and there are a lot of chemicals in the brain, which can cause this kind of mood disturbances. There are a lot of research going on, why these women are, because no other disease has got such a high prevalence of mental health problems. So there's a lot of research going on. So it is basically all the inflammation, and then it is the kinins, and then there is this a prolonged inflammation, increased testosterone. There is a hypothalamo-pituitary axis defects. There is insulin resistance, and all this can lead to increased sympathetic activity, and cytokine spur is there. So there is a lot of inflammation happening in the brain also, causing serotonin deficiency, and there is this depression and sickness behavior. So depression and anxiety is related with the serotonin metabolism. So they found out that all these can eventually end up in the brain metabolism. And I would just like to add on to Ramya. How do you pick up the women whether they are depressed? So there are few symptoms. The patients, whether voluntary or involuntary, tells that either she is sleeping less or she is sleeping more, oversleeping and less sleeping, overeating or loss of appetite, and then losing interest in any activity. Now she is just not interested to go to school or college or workplace, and and feeling tired and very weak and not able to do carry on their routine activities, and then they feel this a feeling of uselessness. They feel they are worthless. I'm a failure, and I've become a burden to my family and things like that. And also they can't concentrate. Maybe they're listening to college or they're reading a newspaper, but their mind is somewhere else, and they can't take any decisions. Whether to go to this doctor, whether to take this tablet, they can't make decision. And in extreme cases, there can be this worthlessness, and what is the point in living? So they can have this kind of suicidal thoughts. So these are all the pointers. Indirectly they'll pop out. They'll tell I'm not able to sleep, or they're telling I'm overeating. So that is when we need to pick. Okay, now there is a psychological component. So you give them this screening questionnaire, so they'll tick it. You won't believe it. They'll readily tick the questionnaire. There is a scoring. So we use in our center PHQ-9, Dr. Sapna. In that, the advantage is that we'll know whether this patient is more prone for depression. At the same time, we will know which area to work on. In the sense, there are these 9 questions. So we will know if she's overeating because of depression. So we can work on her diet. If she's having less sleep, then we can ask her to sleep more or give some anxiolytics. And if there is a suicidal tendency, immediately it is a red signal. Immediately we refer them to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because you never know. In my center, we did a study on 450 patients. The suicidal ideation was almost around 18%. 18% of women had this ideation at some point or the other. They feel, what is the point in you living? And as Dr. Sapna rightly told, now which are this cohort which are very severely depressed? They are these young adolescents. They are these obese girls. They are the girls who have got excess hair on the face, and then they're losing hair on the scalp. They're very, very depressed. It is connected with the body image, and people and the couples who are trying for pregnancy. So infertility. A 35, 40-year-old woman with PCOS, who she has got diabetes, or she is not depressed, because she is less likely to be depressed, because she has been there, done that. She is not really bothered about hirsutism. Whereas a young girl with a body image issue, young woman trying for a pregnancy, obese woman frustrated that she can't lose weight, all these people we have to watch out. Particularly adolescent walks, then you are worried about her mental status. So as clinicians, we need to train ourselves whom to ask leading questions. Actually, international guidelines say screen all patients for depression and anxiety by the locally validated questionnaire. The way to screen all the patients. But if you don't have time, at least be aware. This women with scalp hair loss or hair fall, and then women with hirsutism, adolescents, and women trying for pregnancy, and obese women. These people inevitably are depressed.
So rightly pointed out, madam. I think you've given such wonderful clues. I think I'd just like to add on to one or two more. One is emotional eating. I hear this very frequently from young girls coming and say, Doctor, I don't think I am hungry, but I love, just whenever I'm sad or upset or something, I want to eat a lot. That emotional eating. And you rightly pointed out sleep, disturbed sleep or sleeping too much. Both, there is this whole spectrum, I think very important to pick these up early. And like you said, there are these high risk patients whom we definitely talk to this about. even parents coming up and saying, my daughter is in so much pain during periods, and then she ends up missing her school. She doesn't want to go to school, or she has so much acne that she just doesn't like going to school. She's getting bullied there. So these things are there. Dr. Sapna, in your practice, I mean, I really want to know, you deal with young girls a lot. And these days, social media is such a big thing. In your practice, what do you think is the role of social media in mental health struggles or trying to alleviate from mental health struggles?
I think it is a double-edged sword, to be honest. The social media. I was just chatting to a few of my colleagues, and we were discussing about if somebody is getting bullied in school, for example, for n number of reasons, and these young girls with PCOS are more likely to be bullied because of their weight issues, because of the acne, because of the hair, the patterns of their hair loss and excess growth of hair. They are much more likelier to be bullied. And that bullying, unfortunately, when we were in school or we were in college, used to end when we came home. So, but now with social media, the advent of the social media, there is no escape from it. So as soon as you go on social media, there are groups in which, you're constantly being sent messages, you're, being laughed at. And it is a never ending story. So those who are especially isolating themselves, not going out, and then they are seeing other people having fun. For example, there's a party which they have not been invited to. Other people are putting lots of photographs about the fun that they had in this get together. They come to know that they have not been invited to these parties, that they have been either they are isolating themselves or they are being isolated by their peers. And all this plays a part on their already low self-esteem. They, as Chandrika madam was saying, it's absolutely like, I'm feeling useless, I'm feeling worthless, I'm not likable, I am not worthy of being liked. So all these feelings are going through their mind. And that is very important and that leads on. It's a vicious cycle, for example. But there is no escape from social media now. So I tell a lot of my kids to make use of it because there are benefits as well. So there are a lot of support groups, for example, or there are groups of PCOS, young girls with PCOS, who can then form a support system for each other. So you can use the benefits of social media rather than just, thinking of it as something that to be hated, because unfortunately we can't get away from it. It is there. It is here to stay. It's a irreversible, thing that has happened. So let's make the best use of what there is. So make it a friend and use it to your benefit, is what I tell the girls.
So a lot of, very rightly said, I think a lot of them get influenced with the influencers on social media to look a certain way, to dress a certain way, to be in a certain standard. A lot of them themselves, these young girls take to social media to be influencers themselves. So looking good is very important for them, and body image, like you said, plays such an important part on their self-esteem. I think there is instant gratification with all those likes and hearts, and okay, I have not got these many today, so they're stressed out about that too. So a lot of things that social media is doing, but I guess like today's program itself should be a thing where, as a society, as a PCOS Society of India, we are trying to promote good out there on social media. So I guess following the right people or getting scientific advice is more important in social media. And you said that yes, there are good things there. So I think for all our audience, I guess look for the right and scientific knowledge that has been given and is getting imparted on social media. Anything else our other two panelists would like to talk about this? Because it's a big issue now these days.
See, basically, as I totally agree with Dr. Sapna, because social media has contributed to a lot of goods and more negatives, though. These girls, they feel they are themselves very less appealing and sexually less attractive and not dateable. So that is why they get upset so often. And also that screen time continuously, if they are on social media and on mobile phone, they can lose their sleep, and they know that the sleep rhythm is lost and the biological rhythm is lost, again aggravating their existing hormonal imbalance. So as madam told, we need to tell them to use it judiciously, and then maybe they need to reorganize their peer groups so that they feel more confident.
Dr. Ramya, anything that you would like to add on this?
Yeah, to add on to this, what I suggest is in the social media, we can also add on few good things like awareness about particular issues, like Madam was talking about groups. Again, when we start doing certain positive things, like workshops or like programs on it or a group on it, we have to think about more positive in that aspect. Certain things, negative impacts also, because each of these things are connected to their thought process again. So their self-esteem, confidence, and they spend a lot of screen time in the mobile or laptop, whatever it is. They start comparing their life with others. So that is what one main thing which makes them feel low immediately. So they start compare and they feel that they are worthless or they are nothing in front of others. So next what they do, they start socially withdrawing themselves. So according to me, if they avoid the social media or any of these and make them spend more physical activity towards physical activities, I think that would be better. Because yes, social media is giving a lot of advantage, but say similarly there is disadvantage also. So if we can promote more of physical activity to the people who's taking advantage, I think that would be great. When we talk to them, when we say see them face to face, or when physically they involve by walking, sports, whatever it is, I think that would be more better than taking media this thing.
So true, madam. In fact, I want to, so adding on to just this exactly, and what Dr. Sapna mentioned earlier, non-compliance to therapy for PCOS. So these girls have either a lot of weight gain, uh, cosmetic issues, acne, hirsutism. So sometimes they become so resistant to it that they're like, okay, doc, we just don't want to do. Like Dr. Ramya said, okay, you tell them promote healthy weight loss or promote exercising or sports, but they just don't do it. They're like, we don't have any motivation. Or, after a while they get fed up. They're like, okay, I'm not losing weight. Now what to do? So how do you address these challenges from your end by counseling these young girls? What all can be done? How to keep them motivated?
Yeah, so I mean, I will take this question because see now that is why screening all women for depression and anxiety is very important while treating. It becomes an integral part of our management of PCOS. Suppose if there is a woman who is seeking a fertility treatment, we just give the tablet and she is already depressed. She may not take. It happens that she may not take the tablets. So there is a challenge of patient compliance, compliance to medicines, compliance to exercise, diet, and a lifestyle change. All of us know that lifestyle change is the most important management line of PCOS. To ensure that they do it, that is exactly the reason we need to see their depression, anxiety, send them to the psychologist who will, it has to go hand in hand,
Absolutely.
not only therapy. We need to start lifestyle changes, diet, exercise, and sleep. And then we need to start medications. We need to send to the psychologist. We need to send her to the dermatologist. We need, everything has to start, it has to be a jump start. I call it a jump start. Then gradually, once suppose I give a metformin, then Ramya says, okay, now you keep your smart goals. Ramya is going to talk about smart goals. And then the nutritionist says, do the diet. And psychiatrist says, take these tablets. It will work wonderfully. 1 month is enough to make them to stick on to their management. And gradually I'll tell them, say, till you lose 5% of your body weight, I'm not going to stop the tablets. So then, okay, then they'll keep a target and they'll lose it. Gradually we'll withdraw all the medications. In 6 months, their goal is achieved. Ramya, please.
Can you just
we can
repeat
hear
the
you.
question? The little, or it was not very.
How do we motivate our girls to stick on to the lifestyle or to ensure compliance is by setting smart goals. Smart goals is something like specific goal, measurable, achievable, and then time bound. It is like lose 3 kgs in 3 months. So it is
First
something. So
thing,
there
what
is a
we,
time bound. There is a
yeah.
time. There is a time for it. It is achievable. I'm not telling lose 20 kgs in 3 months. So it is achievable, specific. You're going to lose only this much weight, only weight. So like that. So Ramya does that smart goal into all my patients. Ramya, please talk about it.
First, what we do is we will first address their daily schedule. So, because a few people they're working, homemakers, and if you have kids, so we, according to their lifestyle, we will understand what is their lifestyle first, and immediately we do the rescheduling thing. So their lifestyle part we will change, where we can modify few things, where we can add on their exercise, their diet, and also their sleep, because that is very important for them. With that, parallelly, we make short term goals where we can educate them the requirement of not having too long expectation and getting into disappointment. So this weight is not loose. We ask them to keep short term goals where we educate them about how it happens. So what is the causes which is stopping them to lose their weight? Or we do something called as psychoeducation, where we will make them to understand their own body. When individual understand their illness, they will definitely work on that. So that will be a permanent recovery. So when they don't understand their body, again they will take it easy, again they'll do doctor shopping. When we make them educated, then they will work on those short term goals and they will be motivated. So we will do something called as MET, that is motivation enhancement therapy. So every now and then when they come for the follow up, we assist them through the motivational levels. So what is the insight of them, how much they have understood, how they are doing it. So by these techniques, we make them work on their own health issues. So they will come up with good motivation, so that yes, I didn't have lot of expectation, but little 1% improvement also makes a lot of difference. If I lose 1 kg a month, that it's too much. So in a healthy way. So that is how we help them to fix short-term goals and to work on these things.
Very rightly said. I think and I think probably short-term goals, once they start fulfilling, they feel a little more confident about it, and then they start doing more.
Yes,
And seeing them regularly and a little more often also probably helps, so that they remain in touch. Otherwise, the longer they are away, they don't have anybody to talk to, and again they get into the same cycle. I think motivation is important that way. So very, very.
That is where we give them the rescheduling part. So they will work on it. If that week or that 2 weeks or time when we give them, when this schedule is not working, they are finding it difficult, or they feel that this is not suiting me, we can change the schedule, or we can understand is that particular schedule is causing them stress when they try to change everything at once. So we will modify that again. So we will look for their stress levels also when they're trying to change their lifestyle. We give them the comfort zone that motivates them to do it.
Perfect. So I think this now question, the next one is for all our panelists. You can just tell us, what is healthy sleep hygiene? How much exercising per day should they be doing? And what kind of dietary changes, or just a little brief about it? I think dietary changes is a big thing, but just a brief about how much is required, or calorie counting, or what they can do in their daily life to make these little lifestyle changes. So any of you can take it.
I think Dr. Sapna can talk better about the sleep and sleep hygiene. I'm sure she's.
I'll talk about the sleep hygiene, not an expert on the nutrition. So sleep hygiene is small things that we tell to, people who are struggling with their routine. For example, if somebody is sleeping every day at 3 o'clock in the night, which I see a lot, like, they are on Netflix or then seeing something in the night. Sleep is like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then getting up in the morning, getting very tired with all of this. So fatigue is another thing, not being able to concentrate during the day. So simple measures of getting their sleep slowly back into a routine is what sleep hygiene is all about. So if they're sleeping at 3 o'clock, we would say, now every week getting it down by 1 hour. So getting them to sleep at 2 o'clock and then 1 o'clock, because it's not going to change overnight. Just to tell them that, you have to start sleeping at 10 o'clock every day. One is that. Then simple measures like using your bedroom only to sleep, or sleep related activities. For example, don't do your listening to music or watching your or social media browsing or any kind of screen time in your bedroom. So segregate rooms, even within a room. For example, those who have a lack of space, it can be you're actually sitting on the table and reading or doing your other activities, the bed is only for sleeping. So, so that your mind then tricks you every time that when you're actually on your bed, then it is sleep time. Lighting plays an important role. For example, dimming your light, making it dark, because that is when your melatonin in your body starts increasing. As soon as it gives you a clue or cue that, this is your sleep time, it's time to go to bed. I give a lot of calming down music, for example, lighting up candles. So a lot of things like that. Having a warm bath in the night just before going to sleep helps calming down your senses. A glass of milk, if people are okay to have it, a glass of warm milk just before going to bed, and sticking to a schedule come what may, other than some cheat days. For example, just plan that every day. Don't make unrealistic plans that I'm going to sleep by 9 o'clock every day, knowing full well that that is not going to happen. So if it is 11 o'clock that you're going to, because that is important, that you stick to, as much as possible, stick to the same routine, so that your body is not confused. So 11 to 7, 8 hours, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, depending on your age group, is very important. And then coming to healthy lifestyle, I say at least 30 to 45 minutes of exercise, and it may be anything. For example, if it's not just you have to hit the gym, for example, it could be walking. But I insist that they go out of the house, because that is another thing that especially the people, young girls with PCOS struggle with, because they are cooped up in their room. They don't feel like facing people, so they refuse to go out of the house at all. So I say, no, it is stepping out of the house. You can actually go for a stroll. You can go for a gentle walk, or you can jog, or you can join a yoga group, or any groups that you want. But because the fresh air also helps. For example, it is also a natural antidepressant when you go out of the house, and it releases endorphins into your body. So exercise becomes a very important part to also elevate your mood. So it's a win-win situation. In terms of nutrition, I'm not the best person to address the exact calorie. I refrain people from calorie counting, because I have seen it go the other way around, because especially in young people, then it gets into a very, very almost obsessive pattern that they're counting everything that they're eating. So I always tell children that so long as you're eating healthy, you're getting a good kind of mix of your carbohydrates and proteins and vitamins and leafy vegetables. The most important thing is that you have a mix and match of everything, because the commonest thing I hear, a lot of myths, for example, is carbohydrates are bad, so complete restriction of carbohydrate. So anything in extremes is not good, or weighing themselves every day. So I see a lot of young girls, for example, doing their weight morning and evening, calorie counting, and that too, I have seen people measure actually the amount of rice they are having, and all that is unhealthy. So I keep telling them that, do not take anything to an extreme. So long as you are doing everything in a balance, you should be okay.
Absolutely, no fat diets.
Yeah.
I think
I totally agree with Dr. Sapna. See, now PCOS is an enduring diagnosis. Now, the recent guidelines, international guidelines, say that you get PCOS once, it could be enduring. It can keep coming back, and it can stay lifelong or till you have your menopause. So, in that context, a young girl comes to my clinic and she's a little obese, and she's come to me because of unwanted hair and irregular cycles. And then I see that she's obese and her insulin is high and she's a pre-diabetic. I can't tell her stop eating sweets. 18 years, I can't tell stop eating sweets. She may stop for 1 or 2 months. After 2 months, she'll eat more and change the doctor. So we need to be very, very considerate about this diagnosis, this set of patients. What I tell Dr. Sapna in my patients is that eat everything, eat less. So whatever you are eating, you give a 30% discount. So in the sense, if you are eating weekly 3 times charts, make it weekly once. If you are eating 3 chapatis, make it 2 chapatis. If you are eating 4 idlis, make it 3. If you are eating ice creams weekly once, make it once in 15 days. So gradually, so they are not missing out on any of their favorite food. It is difficult for any person to do a diet. So we can't, tell them, okay, you are going to get diabetes, you're going to become infertile. It's a very, very devastating thing to say. So I tell my patients that gradually, when you go out, you want to eat outside. If you are eating outside 3 times a week, make it 1 time a week. So gradually, once they start the good effect of good diet and sleep and weight loss, they'll only control. We need not tell them. So it's simple. Eat everything 30% less. It makes so much of it. It resonates and they are compliant, I feel.
Great, ma'am. So I think we have very less time, but I just want to quickly bring this out. There are all these kind of various therapies which are available that we hear about. In fact, what happens is the common perception is ki if you go to psychiatrist or counselor, whatever, they are going to write you medications. But before that, what are the other things that can be tried? So I think I would like to ask Dr. Ramya of the various therapies, and then maybe we can take the medications part with Dr. Sapna.
So for us, when these PCOS or any other anxiety with depression is most common when we see in PCOS, for them, first thing we are seeing most of them when we work on CBT, that is cognitive behavior therapy, that is beautifully working with them. Because where I said in the previous question, we try to psychoeducate them. So where CBT also, it's completely a talk therapy where we work on their thought process. When we work about the thought process, like what is their understanding, what is causing them certain things, we try to make them change their perspectives. Try to understand what they're going through. Why? First thing is when we psychoeducate them, we make them understand why. Why am I going through this? How will I come out of this? And repeatedly people will ask, ma'am, can do I really recover from this? Or how much time does it take? So all these questions they'll be asking repeatedly. So when we try to work with them in cognitive behavior therapy, especially we see a lot of them, they change their perception and they themselves come and tell us that, yes, ma'am, this is working with me. So CBT is best for all these kind of issues.
Fantastic. So there is a lot that we can try before giving them medication. So Dr. Sapna, what's your take on medication? When do you start prescribing that? And how do you make sure that they're compliant with it? Because a lot of times they're like, doctor, we don't want to be on lifelong medications. These are probably lifelong, or they'll taper it on their own. So how do you ensure that they are taking it regularly?
So for example, what I have found is that the first appointment, when you're talking about medication, if you spend at least 45 minutes to an hour, which I do, talking only about medication, explaining to them, for example, what are the side effects, what are the potential, problems that might occur, especially with young girls, I spend a lot of time with the family as well, because sometimes it is, my dad doesn't agree with the diagnosis. My dad doesn't want, or my mom doesn't want me on medications. So also, and about telling them the prognosis of what will happen if, for example, they are not on medication plus they are on medications, because it is a prong that Dr. Chandrika was talking about. Everything has to happen together. I also explain to them why I think medication is important for a particular child, because not everyone needs medication. It depends on the severity of the problem. So for example, even in depression, we will say, mild depression, moderate to severe depression, and then severe depression with suicidal ideas, for example. If somebody is having suicidal ideas, then I talk to the parents and say, you know what, you don't have an option here. It is the life and death situation over here. You're going to lose this child if you don't treat it. So medication becomes almost very, very important. Plus they are at the stage that they are not going to listen to anything that the counselor, when they already reach that stage of severity of any illness, the counseling does not work, because they are not going to be compliant. They are almost delusional at that level that, they are very fixed in their ideas that I'm hopeless, I'm worthless, nothing is going to help. So unless you treat biologically to get them to a point where then they will be compliant with, counseling. Plus that, especially in young girls, it's never a lifelong thing. For example, there will always be, when I say that I'm starting you on something, then we are going to monitor you continuously. At least this medication you have to take at least for 6 to 9 months, and then we will, depending on how well you are doing, we will plan to take you off, because that also gives them that hope. Because these are the common questions that I get asked about the side effects, about dependence, that if I am once put on medication, does that mean that I'm going to be on it lifelong? Especially with PCOS, I get asked the question about, does this, especially I'm already obese, is this going to be an additional, is it going to be a medication that is going to put me, increase my weight? And the other is the fertility question, is it going to be, interfering with me having a child? And believe me, there are weight neutral, there are medications which reduce weight as well, in terms of, so the right fit for the right person is what we are trying to find. But in my practice, if you spend at least half an hour to 45 minutes explaining to the patient and their family about the medication, the likelihood of them being compliant is much more.
Yeah, I totally agree. The onus lies with the gynecologist. The gynecologist she is the first window to women's health lifelong, the metabolic health, the mental health, and the reproductive health. So when we see that these women with PCOS are severely depressed, we can't just brush it off. So I referred them to the psychiatrist, and I'm going to tell them, see, the doctor may give medicines, they are not addictive, they won't have major side effects. Please go take. That one push from the gynecologist is very, very important.
Absolutely, madam. So, like you rightly said, women first come to the gynacs. We are the primary care physicians for them. And once from our end, if we are telling them, we are motivating them, I think it goes a long way to clear out that misconception that it is okay to take medications. There is no shame anymore with medications either. If you need it, it's all right, and they may not be long term. But finishing the full course. In fact, I just heard one of a very reputed psychiatrist talk about this, that if you have some body symptom, like say maybe cold, cough, you are going to take medication. Say if you are having a fracture or something, you are going to take rest. So whatever the doctor has prescribed, you are going to do it. So it's the same with mental health. It is also something that may require medication. It is also something that may require rest. So you should take it. So I think
I'm just going to interject here and say that the example I gave is a fracture, putting your leg in a cast, and physiotherapy. So the putting your leg in a cast is what medication will do, and continuing with your physiotherapy is what counseling is going to do, and both are essential. The cast might be for a shorter period of time, so that the physiotherapy works.
Absolutely, madam. So I think we have just about a minute to just give final takeaways from one takeaway from all our panelists. We can start with Dr. Chandrika.
Mental health in PCOS is a very, very important thing to address. All the gynecologists and general practitioners and dermatologists who are seeing the women with PCOS, please make sure you address mental health in all patients.
Dr. Sap.
For me, I think as for patients and their family to keep an eye out on changes in behavior, any sleep changes, more or less sleep, appetite changes, if the child or young person is isolating themselves, refusing to go out of the house, any changes in their functioning where, a highly bright child is then struggling to study or, failing or getting low marks. So any change that you see in a child, young person, woman, it's better to be safe than sorry. Please get them assessed.
Fantastic. Dr. Ramya?
So I suggest everybody to first thing give importance for their lifestyle, because when lifestyle is corrected, half of the disease are treated by themselves. So lifestyle correction is very important. Talk to everyone, because any issues can be solved when you talk and seek help.
Fantastic. So talking about this mental health challenges or whatever you're going through, I think is very important. It is no more a taboo. It's no more a stigma. So I hope through this program, all our audience are now empowered enough to understand, recognize their symptoms and look for help. There are a few questions that we have received, though they are mostly related to just PCOS rather than mental health. Most of our panelists have already covered this, so I think I guess I'll just read them out, but they're already been covered. So, how to maintain weight, also, what are the basic exercises and workout plans? I think mostly this we have already covered. As far as workout plans and everything is there, I guess, Dr. Chandrika, if you can just mention the amount of exercise which is recommended, I think that little part has, if you can enumerate.
Actually, as I told you, see, this maintaining a good lifestyle and exercise and diet is lifelong, isn't it? So we can't be very strict on them, imposing that every day you have to do 1 hour workout on this workout only. So I tell my patients, you need to be physically active throughout the day, not only the exercise part. Throughout the day, you have to be walking, climbing stairs, walking to the bus stand, going around shopping by walk, not don't order food, go to the shop and eat. That kind of being active throughout the day, plus at least 45 minutes of whatever physical activity you like. You may like aerobics for 3 months, you may like dancing for 3 months, then you may go to yoga for 3 months. It's okay. At least 5 days a week, some kind of a good vigorous activities, or clocking a 10,000 steps. The international guidelines say if you want to use some gadgets to track that, please do that. 10,000 steps a day, and whatever activity you like, do it.
Perfect, madam. And high intensity exercises are also something that if they want to go in for gymming, then they can do that. Dr. Chandrika has already covered, is PCOS reversible? It is not. It is something that if you get it, it is there for lifelong, but you can manage it. You can be symptom free. Why is PCOS common in the present scenario? I think that is something that we already covered that right at the start. Of course, diabetes is connected with PCOS. Most of these girls have insulin resistance and are pre-diabetic, and then that can later on lead to diabetes. And there's a question saying, I have PCOD and hormonal imbalance problem. I have a lot of acne, hair fall, acidity problem. Can you please give me suggestions? So I think this is the common issue with all the PCOS girls. I think the primary step that we've been talking about is visit a gynecologist. I think you have to visit somebody. Everything is personalized depending on all your issues, and your gynac should be your best friend. Talk to them about this. So I hope if there are any other questions, Priyanka, Punch?
No, Doc.
Super. Then we'd like to conclude this session, and I really, really appreciate the presence of all our panelists. They have been fantastic. I think this topic itself, for us gynacs also, sometimes not everybody is very well aware, and I think this was an absolutely interesting and an enriching session. Thank you very much for being there. I would also like to thank PCOS Society of India and our president, Dr. Durusha, for taking up this initiative to make sure that our public, our audience, gets the right scientific information. So thank you very much. And of course, Philips and Vijayata team, Priyanka, Kunj, everybody who's been working at the background, thank you so much for making this program possible and giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Riddhi, for a wonderful moderation. You just took it like a flow. It just didn't look like it looked like a discussion. All of us are having a discussion. It didn't feel like a actual serious panel. But then, thank you so much for taking such a very relevant topic and handling it so smoothly.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
On behalf of the PCOS Society India, I would like to extend a heartfelt gratitude to all our panelists. Thank you so much for joining and contributing towards panel discussion. Thank you, Dr. Chandrika Anand ma'am, Dr. Sapna Banga ma'am, Ms. Ramya, and special thanks to Dr. Riddhi Desai ma'am for your significant contribution, efforts, times. You've conducted a wonderful panel discussions, and you asked many pertinent questions regarding mental health. I believe is going to be very useful for all the viewers. And also, lastly, I would like to thank all the viewers who have joined us for today's panel discussion. And thank you, Kunj, for coordinating for this panel discussion. And if anybody has any questions, please get in touch with us. You can contact us on 91529192221. Okay. So see you again next month on the last Saturday. We'll come up with a different topic and different experts. So request everyone to follow our Insta handles to stay updated. So thank you once again, everyone.
Yeah. Priyanka, also can I add that we have a wonderful channel on YouTube, Just
Yes.
with all the public awareness topics, we have a wonderful channel called PCS Connect on our PCS Society website as well. So you will get all the right and relevant information from there, all the scientific information, because all our doctors are doing such a fantastic job of putting them together. So please go ahead and have a look at those as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. We can end this discussion.